is a podcast on the Podfix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.
Welcome to Super Movie Brothers. Let's start the show.
A better world will emerge out of the blood and carnage of the past. A world founded upon faith and understanding. A world dedicated to the wish for freedom, tolerance, and justice.
And more apes die every day.
I see, girl, I think you human. Oh, but you ape, like me. Bad ape.
You are impressive.
So emotional.
I will finish it.
Apes together! Strong! 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 Strong!
Welcome to Super Movie Brothers, super premium Minisode review of War for the Planet of the Apes.
Yes.
Jay, this was my most anticipated film of the summer. This has been my most anticipated film of the year thus far.
Mm-hmm.
Very happy that I saw it opening night on Thursday. Got ahead of most reviews, got ahead of most people's impressions.
Yeah.
I had a fucking blast with this film. And I don't mean fun in that way that like Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was a fucking blast. What I mean was I enjoyed every second of this film that it was on screen.
As did I.
And I found so much to love. This film has built it is the perfect result of Rise and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. And
a lot of surprise elements to it.
A lot of surprise elements, a lot of things that I mean, they don't hit you from left field. It's because it was all set up before. The way it comes at you, it just makes sense. And when it happens, you go, "Oh fuck yeah!" You know what I mean? Like it just hits you with so many. It pays you off in so many ways if you've been a fan of this series. And I've been a big fan of this series since Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Now, I really enjoyed Rise of the Planet of the Apes, had a great time with it. But it was when...
This is Matt Reeves' series.
This is when Dawn of the Planet of the Apes came out. That's when I was like, fuck, dude. Like, this film it's not like Rise. Rise was a good film. Rise told a good story. But Dawn solidified it as like a major franchise. It basically...
It took it to a whole other level.
Dude, if you want to make comparisons, and I will because of...
Some people think that's better than this one.
Because of Batman, I'll make comparisons because Matt Reeves will be directing The Batman now. Rise was very much Batman Begins. And, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is very much The Dark Knight. The only place where it differs is I think War of the Planet of the Apes is as good, if not better, than Dawn. Whereas we know The Dark Knight Rises did not surpass The Dark Knight, but in this case,
I would also agree with that.
I think that War for the Planet of the Apes is every bit the equal of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, if not edge it out at times, only because of where they take Caesar's story and just a natural progression of his character, natural progression of the emotions that he goes through. Not a
typical war movie at all.
Not just in films. So we're not going to spoil it here. We will have a spoiler section at the end. We're just going to talk about the film in very cryptic terms. So where we first meet Caesar in this is 2 years after the end of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. So the war's been going on for 2 years at this point. And I'll just be honest with you, just because I feel like this might help you go see the film a little bit. War is a bit of a misnomer. There's not much of a war in this film.
Right. A lot of it is based from the ape's point of view as well, going through the story.
This war is more of a war of emotions for Caesar. than it is a war of guns, a war of it's the
Caesar
end of a war.
And a little bit of humanity.
Absolutely. And we'll get into that more in the spoiler section when we get to that.
Right.
But Jay, immediately the opening for this film, first off, the lettering, no, I mean, kind of like Star Wars, it has a bit of an opening crawl. It talks about Caesar and the rise, and I love the way that rise is in red and then turns to is in white and then turns to red, and then it talks about the dawn of a new age, and it turns red and then turns white. And then,
but
and then finally,
as you know, I'm not a big fan of reading. And I don't think I'm the slowest reader in the world.
No, it's because you can't read. You just can't read. You just don't know how to do it.
I still think that it left the screen just a touch too early. But yeah, there was a lot to read beforehand.
I'm not being a dick. I'll be honest.
Right.
I was getting bored because the words were on the screen too long.
No, there was a lot. There was like what, three
sentences? Yeah, that's a lot.
No, 3 different paragraphs.
Right, but each one was 3 sentences.
No. The last one was the longest for sure.
It was still only 3 sentences.
So they added like a comma or 2 in there.
Maybe. You just can't read, man. I'll teach you to speed read someday. I really dug that. But then, like, it kind of had like a cold open, right? Like, it kind of had like this opening where, like,
yes,
soldiers are in the redwood forest. And this moment, like, for me, the opening of the film, it made me realize that, like, this was a Vietnam film, right? Like, I mean,
with the helmets, the writing on the helmets and everything like that.
It reminds you, the writing on the helmets reminded me of Full Metal Jacket.
Mm-hmm.
The way it was shot and the war that was going on reminded me of Bridge Over River Kwai. Reminded me of something later on. Really reminds me of Apocalypse Now, but I'll get to that probably in the spoiler section. But yeah, it really reminded me of like this Vietnam War, man. Like the American soldiers versus the savage Viet Cong. You know what I mean? And the apes are definitely the savage Viet Cong. And I love the fact that the apes are using whatever guns they can salvage, but mostly using arrows and spears. And you find out that's why arrows have been the most effective weapon for the past 17,000 years. I don't fucking know. It's why, the bow and arrow, the invention of the bow and arrow has been the most effective weapon in man's history. Absolutely. True. You get to see that, but it's the scene that comes after that really gets me. It's the first time that Caesar shows up in this film. It's about 10 minutes into the film, and the way he looks is different immediately when you see him. It's different.
Yeah,
he looks different. He's still Caesar. You can definitely tell it's him because he has the mark on his on his right shoulder. You can just tell by the way he carries himself that it's Caesar. But it doesn't look like Caesar.
Nah.
He's a little bit gray in the beard territory.
Yeah, he's certainly aging.
And the ape CGI, it's amazing that it came this far in just 3 years. It looks this good after just 3 years. Not that Dawn had any problems. Dawn sold me on the CGI, but I felt like there was a few times in Dawn where you could tell the CGI, and it wasn't with the apes. I think it was with the bear scene where they're fighting the bear in Dawn that you could really see the weakness of the CGI a little bit.
I saw this in a Dolby theater in high def,
God.
with the...
But dude,
the quality was insane. I mean, I had the chance to see all the weaknesses, and I didn't see any. It was incredible.
And you could sit there and say, like, man, Andy Serkis is the best mocap actor out there. You know what mocap acting is? It's just fucking acting. That's all it is. It's just acting.
It really is.
And then they put a CGI model over it. But everything Andy Serkis did winds up on screen.
It literally is no different.
And you got to think, how fucking amazing is it that Andy Serkis has played Caesar since a baby into his adolescence, into his adulthood, in through everything that happened in Dawn, and now everything that happens here. That's been Andy Serkis. Infant Caesar is played by the same guy who's playing old long short hairs, old gray short hairs. Yeah. Caesar right now. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And I know he'll never win an Oscar for it. Maybe he might get...
No, he won't. And I can't... I mean, who's to say? We're halfway through the season. We haven't seen all the movies yet, but he definitely deserves a nomination because he has not been nominated yet, and he deserves it regardless.
This film was definitely the most character-driven story I've seen all year so far. It was definitely the best portrayal of a character that we know.
Sure.
There's been some,
especially on an epic scale like this.
Right. But I'm saying everything is fine-tuned and well fucking done.
And you know what I noticed as well? The music was absolutely gorgeous in this movie.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Michael Giacchino, who's a local to us. He's from the Philadelphia area, my friend. And he was also the composer for Rogue One. He took over on that.
He is rising up the ranks now.
He actually came in midway through Rogue One and took over that score and did a fantastic job with it.
He did.
And then he also has another film that's in the top 10 right now. Actually, number 2 after War of the Planet of the Apes dethroned at number 1 last week, the film we reviewed last week. He did Spider-Man Homecoming. So Michael Giacchino. Just get used to hearing his name, Michael Giacchino.
Yeah.
Because he's I'm not saying he's the next John Williams, but I mean he's definitely going to be a Danny Elfman and a Hans Zimmer. He's going to be a name that you hear
up there. Sure.
as far as composing goes.
Already he is.
I mean he's up there.
At least this year.
He's up there. I mean, if you talk
nailing it.
3 of the biggest film, one of the biggest films in 2015, 3 of the biggest films in 2017, this guy has done the score for. So get fucking used to him. He'll probably be doing the score for Han Solo. Also, he won't be taking over, John Williams' role as the main composer for Star Wars, but he'll definitely be taking over the scores for the anthology series of Star Wars and Michael Giacchino. And he is, I think he does a fantastic job. And one of the things I like about him is his score is a little bit more bombastic. It's a little bit more in your face than he doesn't
Based on Jurassic World and Lost, of course.
Yeah.
That's in your face.
He doesn't just poignate a scene. I mean, his music really defines a scene at certain points. Not saying every point, but at certain points. Yeah, absolutely fantastic music, and it's absolutely fantastic special effects as far as the creature makeup go. There's not a point in this film that you don't believe that the apes are real. And I think very purposefully, it's the most human Caesar's Eyes has ever been. And this film, in juxtaposition to Dawn, very intentionally tells a solely ape story. Where in the first one, it was very much humans against apes. In Rise of the Planet of the Apes, it was still Caesar's story, but it was still about humans dealing with the rise of the Planet of the Apes. In Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, it was about their cooperation, their cohabitation. It was about two leaders, really, a leader of men and a leader of apes. And, the good men and the bad men in both worlds. Where this one was just about apes. That's it. One good ape, one bad man. And
one bad ape in the movie as well.
Bad Ape was the character's name, who was played by Steve Zahn.
Pleasant surprise and good timing in the third act when it comes into play.
No,
it was
midway
like
through,
it was like midway. It was
second
pretty much midway, yeah.
But I mean,
this comic relief.
It was absolutely like this is the first time where there's no human character to hold yourself to. I mean, this is all apes. For 20, 30 minutes at a time, it's all apes. And you just go with it, man. We talked about in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes where it was, holy shit, dude, 20 minutes of apes. Like just 20 minutes in the beginning where it's just apes and it's fantastic.
It was.
This film is far more of that.
Absolutely.
And it just really shows that they've built a world that you're willing to buy into, so much so that you don't need dialogue, so much so that you don't need, and it
didn't even stick out. Like when you watched Dawn, you noticed it, as much as you enjoyed it, you still kind of noticed it.
But at this point, right now, you're just sold on it.
Exactly, you're completely in it
because they so naturally progressed these stories. Like they just so naturally progressed it into what it has become now. It's just absolutely fantastically done. I just don't know how else to say it. Like everything's just been done so well throughout. And I don't even think they meant to do it when they were bringing Rise of the Planet of the Apes back. I think when they brought Rise back, I think they were pleasantly surprised with what they got with that.
Sure. I mean, even the fact that they had smaller stars in this movie, like James Franco and Frida Pinto, like coming off of Slumdog Millionaire, they weren't huge stars
Right.
at the time. They
And
got them for the cheap.
And Rupert Wyatt wasn't a big director for Rise either. It just so happened that he had contractual obligations that he couldn't come back for the sequel, that they wound up picking up Matt Reeves, who previously, before that, directed Cloverfield and Let Me In, before doing Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
And I loved Let Me In.
Cloverfield was critically acclaimed for the most part. I think it's more fan-claimed. I think fans like it a whole lot more than critics. It's probably the best version of a found footage film. Let Me In is okay. You like that a lot. I think, Let the Right One In, which is the original one of that, is far better than that. But I think Matt Reeves' best films so far are films where simian stars. Andy Serkis is the star. I mean, it's so well done, and he's done such a great job. And this is what makes me so hopeful. Watching this is what makes me go, fuck yeah, I can't wait to see a Matt Reeves directed The Batman. Like, I just can't fucking wait for it, because he did such a fantastic job with this. And the story, it's like I said, it's without getting into spoilers, I can't get into spoilers, but it takes Caesar on a journey that forces him to question himself, not his leadership, but question himself, his own emotions, and where that could possibly lead him and the rest of his apes. Mm-hmm. It forces him in contact with with a human who's just as desperate, who is just as willing as he is to do what it takes for survival of his people.
Exactly.
Although he has crossed the line that Caesar has yet to cross between, survival and, between madness and survival. He's gone to the point where madness is what will ultimately win the day in his mind. We're talking about Woody Harrelson's character, who's only named the Colonel, which I found pretty poignant throughout the film, that if you notice, none of the humans have names. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Other than the little girl human, which they give a name to. They don't really point out human names. He's just the Colonel.
Well,
he's
I
a
think
role.
it's safe to say,
he's a role. He's not a character.
Exactly. I think it's safe to say that this is in the distance in the future, and it's almost
a bit. It's about 10 or 15 years past.
It's almost
Rise.
an apocalypse, like where it's just like everything's in ruin. Everybody is just like in desperate order and need.
We're done
to perform a function.
We're done.
Try to survive, and that's it. It doesn't fuck the names. Names have no meaning anymore.
No, I think it's more than that. Having no names animalizes the humans. It forces them to no longer have a personable side to them.
Well, they actually had one soldier in the very beginning be set up to potentially be that. Doesn't end up being that way sometimes. I'll tell you. I was a little surprised by that. They kind of kept that.
I wasn't.
In its back burner the whole time, and then at the very end, no.
It was all about
just a soldier.
It was
staying
about
true.
showing you that the apes were more human than the humans.
Right.
It's all about showing you that Caesar's humanity is what makes him such a gravitating character. It's what really gravitates you to his story. That I absolutely loved about it. I loved Woody Harrelson. I mean, don't get me wrong. He played his role fantastically, and I think he was the perfect villain for this role. He was completely in charge.
So emotional.
I love that part, dude. And that's in the trailer. It's not a spoiler. When he's just, he's spelling out everything to him.
He's really trying to get it through his head, like understand his viewpoint.
No, he's really trying to just explain to you, and it's just like, this is where humanity is. How can I be any other way? How can I act any other way? How can I do anything else than what I'm doing? I'm talking about survival. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about, what makes me human. I'm talking about keeping humans alive. Yeah, everything I'm doing, it's not personal. I have to understand that. I don't hate you. He's like, but I also feel that I need to solidify my place as the superior, species on this planet, and you threaten that. And I love, Caesar's reaction. It's so emotional. I fucking love that. And yeah, at times you get the sense the Colonel's a little full of himself. He definitely is a preacher preaching to his men. You see that especially when the men line up in the morning.
He has to be,
and
in a
they
way,
chant,
you know?
and
Sure.
they have to have something to fight for. You have to give yourself to a higher power to continue going on, because if you're only out for survival, then what you become at that point is an animal.
Yeah.
Animals learn how to survive. Humans learn how to thrive. And he is all about showing that humanity can thrive still, despite the fact that even humans themselves are against him. Other humans who want to keep their humanity. Honestly, under Colonel's plan, humanity might have had a chance. But ultimately, humans want to remain human too much. And our morality is what makes us different than animals. And that's one of the things that shows us Caesar's struggle, is that his morality, what brings him to the point that he's at in this film, is it's all about his morality. And that's what makes him just as human as any human character that's ever been in these films.
I agree.
And, we're talking about this stuff because this is such a character-driven story. It's all about character. That's the only thing that you can really point to say is absolutely fantastic. It just marries the sum of all of its parts so fucking well. The music, the special effects, the acting, the characters, the story, it all comes together. It all comes to a head. And it ends in I feel like the only way that it possibly could have ended.
Absolutely. And it was absolutely gorgeous, and it was fitting, and it definitely led with a lot of open-ended questions, and led to possible other movies.
And we'll get into the spoilers.
And the originals.
We'll get into the spoilers very soon, but it does connect itself, probably more so than Rise does, to the original Planet of the Apes, the 1968 Planet of the Apes. It does marry itself to that pretty well, and it sets itself up in that direction to where if this was the last film in this franchise, you would be okay with it. You're close enough to the point where Planet of the Apes is, that the original Planet of the Apes with Charlton Heston, that you could go with it. But I feel like there's more story to tell here, and even Matt Reeves in interviews has said he's done. He's not going to be back. But he's left it open enough to where there are other apes that are around that you can continue stories with. You can do large jumps into the future. You could really dig into more, and there's still more story to tell. And he sets up a lot in this, especially with the introduction of the character of Bad Ape, who's played by Steve Zahn. So Jay, what do you got for a score for this film, man?
I have an A-. There were some slowish parts throughout the movie that, as much as I still enjoyed watching, it kind of made it feel slightly uneven at times. And other than that, I think, I'm trying to think. It's hard to nitpick this thing because it is such a poignant movie.
Yeah.
I mean, this is my number one.
If it's hard to nitpick, then just fucking give it an A, motherfucker.
I have a difficult time giving it an A. Or any movie an A, or let alone an A+. It probably is an A movie too. I'm just trying to nip it down to an A-. I probably shouldn't, because this is a better movie. You know what? I want to bump it up.
Well, I'm sorry.
I'm comparing the last few grades. I've been giving a lot of A-. And this is a higher quality movie overall. So
other than let's say it was a little slow for you at points, which I found no slow points in this film. I felt every moment that happened was pretty character driven, which is great for me.
Right. But yeah, no, I will give it a solid A.
I'm giving it an A+.
Awesome.
I fucking love this movie.
Fuck yeah.
I fucking love this movie.
I'm so happy for you, because this is your number one anticipated movie of the year.
I went in there pretty stoked.
All of your expectations.
Went in there pretty stoked, pretty jazzed.
That's
and
great.
It met it visually, directorial wise. I love that it paid homage to a lot of things that have come before it. I love that it continues the story in the way that it did. I love that everything feels natural. I love that the characters are just so well taken care of. I love the fact that I know the name of fucking apes. I love the fact that I know who Rocket is, who Cordelia is. I love that I know, who these apes are as characters. I love that. And I love Matt Reeves for making me know that, for making me give a fucking shit. I love that. I absolutely love that. and I'm going to give it an A+, man. I thought Woody Harrelson was fantastic. I think it's the greatest villain that Caesar's gone against so far.
Yes.
I think that all the apes did, all the mocap actors did such a fantastic job acting with. I fucking thought it was absolutely fantastic. I loved the story that it told. I even told Lauren when we were leaving, I didn't know what to score it at first, because I didn't know whether I was underwhelmed by what happened towards the end of the film. But the more I thought about it, I thought about how perfect it was.
Right.
I said, like I told her, I was like, I might be a little disappointed because this is War of the Planet of the Apes, and I didn't really get much of a war. I got more of the end of a war. And then I started thinking about, like, the war isn't what's going on between apes and humans. The war was what was going on inside of Caesar. That war that he had with himself, and
for survival.
And I love that. And that's what I ultimately realized I loved. I love the fact that the apes didn't ultimately win the day. They just moved on. Humanity did what humanity does, and nature survives
from a nature.
That's right.
Towards the end of the film, there are no spoils.
Right.
But there's like a natural.
It was Caesar's ties to his. It was him and his people's ties to their nature. That allowed them to survive in the end.
Exactly.
And I thought everything was just told so well.
Yep.
A+. Yep. So I absolutely love this film.
Me too. I mean, this was a really, really happy, pleasant surprise. I mean, not surprise. I mean, this is one of those things.
Yeah,
that we knew it was going to be a good film. We just didn't know how good, and it really delivered. And like I said, for the most part, the things that stuck out with me was the character-driven aspects of it all, and really fleshing out all the characters in all the right ways, and the music. The music was beautiful, 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 and the CGI, perfect.
All right, Jay, you ready for it?
Spoilers.
Play that fucking spoiler siren.
Spoiler warning. Spoiler warning. Spoiler warning.
All right, so Jay, down to spoilers, and right off the fucking bat, this film starts with some fucking cool little Easter eggs. We know that all the apes that are working with the humans are called donkeys, and branded on their foreheads is the Alpha and Omega symbol, which actually means something to the larger extent to the Planet of the Apes films. Alpha and Omega is the name of the radiation-scarred humans that live beneath the Planet of the Apes in the sequel to Planet of the Apes. They are called the Alpha and the Omega, which is the symbol for the Colonel and his men, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end.
Yeah.
And that is what the nuclear bomb worshipping people that live beneath the Planet of the Apes, the humans that live there, are. They're horribly mutated and radiation scarred. They're barely even humans anymore, but they still hold on to everything that the Colonel was trying to hold on to in this film. And I loved that. Absolutely loved that. Other things that go on, really, we talk cryptically about Caesar and going on his emotional journey. That's predicated because his wife and his child are fucking slaughtered. His oldest son is killed. His youngest son, Cornelius, survives. And it's at this point that Caesar is driven by revenge.
Completely. I mean, absolutely completely. And
he smartly doesn't send the rest of his apes with him to fight the humans. He doesn't send them to the slaughter with him. He sends them off to the desert oasis that his son and Rocket found. And he goes off on his own to find his revenge. And of course, his good friend Rocket, who was the ape that challenged him in Rise of the Planet of the Apes,
right,
and was his biggest supporter in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, returns in this film and comes back. And I kept telling Lauren the whole time, I was like, I'm going to cry if Rocket dies. I get if Caesar has to die, I understand that. But if Rocket dies, I'm going to cry. And luckily, I'll just tell you right now, if you stayed here for the spoilers, you know that you've seen the film. Rocket doesn't die, man. Rocket stays with it. And I love that. I love that Rocket is there at the end. Obviously, he has to lose some people along the way. Maurice, thankfully, doesn't die. Maurice gets to continue on. I think Maurice is much like we talked about, like we will talk about in our main episode with Game of Thrones. Maurice is the fucking maester, right? Like he's the recorder. He's the one that's going to record history.
Yeah.
He's the one that's going to tell Caesar's story. He's the one that makes sure that Caesar becomes the legend that he becomes when we get to the Planet of the Apes films from the late 60s and early 70s.
Yeah.
He's the one that is. He's the mind. Not even so. He's the heart. He's the one that understands everything so well. And just moving forward with it, just to get through all these, we get a lot with the little girl they find. We find a lot about why humanity evolves the way they evolved. We find out that the virus has changed strands. Even the survivors, the people who are immune to the virus, are now susceptible to certain parts of the virus can attack them. They lose their ability to speak. They lose their ability to comprehend things as well as they did. They basically turned people into toddlers, and that's the biggest fear. We find out that the Colonel is offing people who show this. We know that Caesar kills a man who deserted from Colonel's army and hid himself in the forest to protect his daughter, who had that same disease that she lost her ability to speak. And that's when we are introduced to. We don't get her name till much later, but Nova. And Nova is a throwback to the woman that Charlton Heston is with in the original Planet of the Apes. Her name was Nova. So I thought that was a nice little touch. It's not like they named her that. She just got the nameplate of a Chevy Nova handed to her, and it just kind of it was a little nod to it.
Yeah, that was fun.
And Bad Ape. What we learn about Bad Ape is that Bad Ape was not one of Caesar's apes. He's never been in it. He did not get a canister of virus gas thrown in his face that made him smarter. The virus has spread, and it spread to other zoos, and it spread to other places, and it caused these other apes to develop intelligence. And now, it's gone worldwide, pretty much, is what it comes down to. So that's something that might come up in sequels. We know there's other apes out there, and maybe all of them don't hold the same level of morals or don't have the same drive that Caesar and his apes do. They didn't have a Caesar, so who knows how that will turn out when they come up against other apes. Perhaps the next war for the Planet of the Apes will be ape versus ape, because when ape has no more man left to fight, where does ape turn?
Exactly.
So I really dug that. I really dug the way that the Colonel eventually got taken out, where Nova left her baby doll for Caesar to comfort him. Mm-hmm. And he picks it up. And I told Lauren, the second he picked it up, I went, that's it. He's got it. He's going to have that virus. And I love the fact that Caesar was driven by revenge throughout this entire movie. But he even himself, he drew parallels between him and Koba. Koba was driven by revenge in the second one because of human work. And he just hated humanity for what they had done for him.
Right.
And Caesar became that. And that is where, if you listen to this whole thing, you got into this, that is where I bring in Apocalypse Now. When Caesar is laying by the fire and he falls asleep and he sees those visions in the same way that Martin Sheen saw visions of Marlon Brando from Apocalypse Now. That's where you get that little bit of Apocalypse Now just slipped in there. Koba's presence, as much as he's not in this film, he's in this film.
It was useful and it's kind of scary too.
Yeah, his presence is felt, and he does show up in visions. But I absolutely love that. I love that Caesar became the thing he feared the most. Caesar became the thing he hated the most. The thing that he thought he would never become. Ape never kill ape. And Koba broke that rule. But to stop Koba, the only thing that Caesar could do was to kill him. And in doing so, Caesar set himself down a path that he may not, agree with himself. Right. But now he's on that path and he has to continue it. And then after his family dies, he's only after revenge. It's only after he sees Woody Harrelson, the Colonel, in that state where he can't speak, that he decides that revenge isn't the way to end this. Revenge isn't the way to move forward. The moving forward is moving on from this, getting away from this. And it just so happens that humanity destroys itself.
They do.
And the apes get to move on.
And nature destroys humanity.
Yeah. And it was just so well done. Yeah, it was almost like natural selection happened. The avalanche happened not because they couldn't write a way for the apes to escape in the script, only because the avalanche happened because nature needed to destroy man. Ape couldn't destroy man. Mm-hmm. Nature needed to tell man that its place in this world is over and the apes will move forward. And I love the whole ending scene with them going across the desert. It was very Moses. It was
beautiful.
Very Moses. Moses led his people through war, led his people through the desert, led his people to the promised land.
That's true.
And in the end, Moses never got to see the promised land in the Bible. Moses died before they get there. And Caesar
was able to see a beautiful sunset.
He was able to see
all his
it.
people.
And unfortunately, Caesar doesn't make it, and he dies. And I think that's the only way to move forward. Like, you can't have Caesar. You can't have a creature that was born from oppression, that was born from war, and then, have him continue on to be the leader of what you're meant to hope would become a utopian society. He can't do that. He's not a wartime consigliere. He's not a.
Nope.
So he has to bow out of the series now. Now, whether they come back with a sequel in the next 3 years, I don't know. I kind of hope that we take a break from it for a while. I hope when we come back, it makes sense for it to come back. I hope that when it comes back, it's got a new director, it's got a new vision. They might have a new trilogy or whatever. But I want to take some time off. I want people to.
I hope in 4 or 5 years. Yeah, minimum
5-6 years. Yeah,
minimum that because you know how it is the studio system. So
yeah,
that's the minimum. Yeah,
but this is #1 film right now.
For me as well.
In the film,
Sure.
in the theaters, box office wise, #1 film for me this summer, and I think for film fans, it's probably going to be one of their #1 films of 2017.
Well, we have Dunkirk knocking on the door.
I know.
We'll see how that turns out.
Dunkirk coming up next week. So me and Jay both absolutely love this film.
We do.
If you're listening to the spoiler segment, I know that means that you watched the film. But please, if you enjoyed this review, you like everything that we're doing on Super Movie Brothers, but you're kind of quiet, you don't want to tell people about it, you can tell people about it. You can go on to iTunes, you can leave us a 5-star review. Go on there. It helps us out. You can also take a screenshot of that review. You can send it to supermoviebrotherspodcast@gmail.com. That'll enter you to win this month's Loot Crate. Also, go on to Twitter. Follow us on there @supermoviepod on there. There you can find, we put up polls, we put up listener questions and stuff like that. If you follow us on Twitter, you will get those. You can respond to them. We'll respond to them on the show. That kind of makes up our segments here. And then also be sure to check out our network website, www.podfixnetwork.com. There you can find reviews, written reviews from us, sometimes from other podcasts that are part of the Podfix family. We're so happy to be part of the Podfix network. All the shows are, and this is not bullshit, all the shows are a lot of fun.
They are.
Definitely go out there.
Check out the website. You'll really find some good stuff out there.
Yeah, give each one a listen. And if you enjoy them, subscribe and keep going. If it's ho-hum, so be it. You'll hear them on our show eventually because we do love having guests like we will later on this week when you hear our full episode 52 where we have Tom from Jake and Tom Conquer on there. They are a network show. So thanks a lot for listening. Have a great night. Cheers.
Cheers.
Apes together, strong, strong.